Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Name Pending, because we didn't realize that there was already a YouTube channel with 2 million views called Kings and Generals. Whoops. But we'll get that straightened out later. I am General Blue.
And I am King Cold.
And today, we were originally going to talk about Pokemon. We do have an episode recorded. There were some minor technical issues, but for today, what we're actually going to be talking about is something on topic, the Cell Saga.
Yeah, excuse me. I got a sore throat today. I was think shit. I was thinking about the Cell Saga yesterday at work. Because I watched that Many Masks Go On video, which was all right by Plago Gripes. Not my favorite of him. But the entire Cell arc, like as soon as Goku kills Mecha Frieza, Trunks kills Mecha Frieza, and onward is like, god damn it, is a really interesting part of Dragon Ball. Because it's like, fuck, sorry, this big lump in my throat. So there's like this weird unknown frontier kind of with this arc. So you have a time traveler who comes in from the future, who basically is like Vegeta's kid, which is already a weird point, because like a lot of people didn't even know if Vegeta would stick around, because he was sticking around on Earth. And he tells Goku all this stuff about androids in the future, and it makes for a really interesting arc. Sorry about the coughing today.
To kind of jump on that, I do agree that there's a lot in the arc we don't really know about right away, and it does very well in its pacing, where we're kind of guessing what's going to happen next, because it's like, in the previous arcs, it was kind of straightforward. There was a threat coming, we had to prepare to fight them, but in this particular instance, you're not necessarily sure what the threat is going to be. They don't have all the information available. They know that if they tried approaching things the way they are, they would all die. That's information they have right away. So they do have to take it pretty seriously on how much they should prepare for it in order to, in order to not die.
Yeah, what I liked though is the whole warning of the future, because it was the future Trunks timeline is probably an extremely popular era of Dragon Ball. Like that whole timeline where Trunks lives in is a lot of people fantasize about like what could happen. And I think the idea that this like Saiyan survivor, where the strongest fighter is Gohan, and we don't have a perception of Gohan right now at this point. We just know that he has hidden potential, and in the future he goes Super Saiyan. So one thing this kind of tells us for the arc is that we're going to expect Gohan to be a major player and go Super Saiyan. And I definitely remember waiting a very long time until Gohan went Super Saiyan initially as a kid, because I was like, oh my god, Gohan can go Super Saiyan? Like, that was just like a really cool idea to me.
It definitely did help break the door open with the idea that there were more Super Saiyans out there than just one. That is something that I'm sure the writing staff probably regretted a little bit, is sort of devaluing the first transformation, like we talked about a while ago in the Saiyan marketing episode. But it at least gives us a good power scale of what to deal with, and that is, the Super Saiyan isn't invincible. There are actual threats that can surpass it, and in this particular instance, it's somebody that had a vendetta against Goku in the past that is trying to outmatch him and everyone he knows.
Yeah, I like that it's someone from Red Ribbon as well. Because that really ties in the first part of Dragon Ball extremely hard. Because DBZ does, it's obviously the sequel to Dragon Ball, but a lot of Dragon Ball's events didn't matter too much for the first part of DBZ. I don't think anything from the Red Ribbon Army arc really mattered to the Frieza arc and stuff like that. And just seeing that these characters are still around and that they made these mega powerful androids that were like obscenely strong and basically killed everyone. It was like, oh, whoa. That was wild.
I mean, you want to talk about early Dragon Ball not really meaning anything. Frickin' Pilaf and the gang don't appear at all in the entirety of Z. So, yeah.
Good. I don't know. I like them in Super, but I didn't like them too much after a certain point.
They could get a little overused in OGDB, yeah. But I mean, it does help because it's like, when Goku was a kid fighting the Red Ribbon Army for the first time, he was pretty furious because they killed Bora, they hired Tao, who almost killed him, they were, like, starting to actually take over a reasonable amount of the world, so Goku just kind of has to go into their base, get back the balls that were stolen, and he takes them all down with him. But that's the thing, is realistically, he couldn't take everybody down. Now, in the anime, I think they had Colonel Violet introduced, and she, like, escaped because she wasn't completely evil. But, I mean, as far as the true believers that were able to escape, that's a real concept that would have repercussions to the rest of the Dragon Ball universe. And if the whole army couldn't beat Goku, then naturally they're going to need something a lot stronger if they want to beat him in the future.
Oh yeah, and I think now I'm not gonna talk about like behind the scenes stuff about Android 18 being replaced by Sal in the later arc and stuff. But I do like Android 17 and 18 a lot. They're actually a few of my favorite characters because they kind of it's like they're self-aware on how silly Dragon Ball is at times. Like I really like how 18 beats Vegeta. She's like the first character to beat a Super Saiyan.
At least without any assistance, yeah.
Yeah, without assistance. But she like demolishes Vegeta, man. I know there are people who are like, holy shit, when it happened. I remember being pretty floored myself. Come on. Try and get this lump out of my throat.
It was definitely a surprising moment to a lot of people, because you really weren't expecting a Super Saiyan to lose under those conditions.
Well, Super Saiyan is probably one of the most iconic transformations in Dragon Ball. It's probably the most iconic transformation, like, for the entire franchise. And it's like, in Frieza, the Super Saiyan was literally unstoppable. The power boost it gave was not only completely fucking ridiculous, but we basically watch Goku, like, it wasn't like full power Frieza where it just taxed his body to a point where he couldn't even like fight. It just was like the perfect form for Goku. He was angry, big power boost, enhanced all of his abilities by a ginormous amount, greater than anything we've ever seen. And then seeing it defeated really was a big thing, apparently. Like, I did some digging around with like my dad and uncle who were around when this was airing, and they said it was actually really unheard of at the time where Goku and them would lose, especially after getting such a giant power boost.
I mean, as far as like, they spend a good chunk of the Saiyan saga and the Namek saga kind of talking about the legend of the Super Saiyan, and so, Goku beats Frieza, who by all accounts is the Galactic Emperor. He's like the conqueror of several galaxies at that point, more or less. And I don't think... I'm not really sure what Shonen Jump or whatever, wherever they publish them, explain this in detail, but it's not like the original manga or the original Japanese anime was explicitly like, hey, this is how the power multiplier works, so you know what their strength is gonna be. No, for all intents and purposes, the Super Saiyan was just like a being capable of immense power, enough to be potentially the savior or destroyer of the universe at that point, at least from the audience's perspective. So, having the Super Saiyan lose, especially after several years of training, which Vegeta did after Trunks arrived, and then we have the knowledge that he lost one-on-one, 17 and 16 may potentially be just as strong or even stronger than 18 was, that was surprising, and it really just made it feel like the fight was completely unwinnable.
Oh yeah, I agree very much with that, because it's like, we see, like I said, we see Trunks' future through flashbacks and stuff, but it's such a shocking thing to see in Dragon Ball, this hardcore future of... Because Dragon Ball's always been like... Now, it's never been like hardcore, like mega dark, but it definitely got really dark in that era. I feel like that's some of the darkest moments in Dragon Ball is the the future Trunks timeline. And
Definitely so.
yeah, and I would say like a lot of people probably don't think too much about that anymore, because the Goku Black arc tried to be dark, but I feel like the whole Cell arc just had a better understanding of how to make things grim. Because you have a point where Goku's literally just out of the plot. He's basically dying. He's dying of a heart disease. And it's just like, oh yeah, if Goku dies, we're all fucked.
The Black Arc kind of went a little overboard with the concepts it was trying to introduce. The Cell Arc, I mean, you can argue that they had a few too many ideas at one time, but, like, the thing is, they at least paced them in such a way they weren't really overlapping. Because they start off with the preparation. This is very good power scaling just in the sake of telling us how much of a threat we have. So, Frieza comes back, and he's supposed to be basically as strong or slightly stronger than he was on Namek, and Trunks obliterates him, but Trunks is absolutely nothing against the androids from his future, at least according to what he states. So, therefore, it gives us a good scale that Frieza is nothing compared to the two of them. And the Z-Fighters do have a long amount of time to train, so, you know, training in the franchise can increase a person's power pretty much. It seems somewhat random, but it's kind of what the plot needs. So when the first androids arrive, 19 and 20, and the Z-Fighters are actually able to stand up against them, that doesn't seem unreasonable, because they knew about this and they had 3 years to prepare for this. But then when 17 and 18 wake up and make everyone look like a joke, well, then the problem just got a whole lot worse.
Oh yeah, like totally. 17 and 18 were like, I know there are some people who complain about like them being like bratty kids or something, and I've heard that thrown around, but like I honestly really like those characters because, well, one thing that was interesting about them is that they have unlimited stamina, right? So they can like basically shoot infinite ki beams, and they don't get tired. And since they're more machine than person, they can't be sensed. And they created this really nice like how in the Namek arc there was a cat and mouse game with Frieza and his men, with them not having scouters, so they had to wait for the Ginyu Force, wait for all the stuff that happened. But I really like when it happened with the androids more, because they just look like normal people, right? So nobody's gonna suspect who they are, because I think 1920 got the drop on Yamcha, and it was like, this poor motherfucker, dude. First of all, Yamcha can never catch a break. This poor man.
Yeah,
he
really.
dies in the he dies in the Saiyan arc. Like, he just gets booty clapped in the Saiyan arc. You know, he looks cool fighting Sideman, and then like 5 minutes later, he just gets turned to paste. It's like, oh, poor Yamcha. Then later on, you know, after all this training with King Kai and everything, he just instantly gets jobbed by Dr. Gero. It's like, that poor dude. He's just trying to fight.
I mean, at that point, their best hope was really trying to combo the androids, because since they knew they were coming, the humans pretty much knew they didn't really stand a chance on their own, but they needed to be support. Yamcha couldn't even really do that. He was just kind of the one they picked out first of all, and then he got obliterated almost.
Yeah, oh my goodness. I love it so much. But for me, I think the highlight of the arc is actually when Imperfect Cell makes his debut, because it's honestly really freaky. Like, now I don't get as freaked out anymore watching that. When I was a kid watching that, I was like, oh, you know, because it's like gross Bugman licking his lips while drinking people is not something you want to think about.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I don't like Team Four Star very much, but I think they did a good enough job with the whole like jokes. So it was like, you want to see me drink this guy? Yeah, they really played up and like understood how weird and obscure Cell is as a character. So it's like, yeah, nice.
I do like how Cell was foreshadowed earlier than he actually appeared, because when 17 and 18 wake up 16, 17 is internally monologuing. He's like, okay, but wait, if Gero could make this guy from a purely mechanical model, why did he need to kidnap 18 and I and make us mechanical? Why didn't he just make us pure machines again? So it's kind of building up that there's a purpose to them being partway human, and that wasn't Gero's endgame. I do kind of wish that there was a little bit more depth, like if maybe the Z-Fighters heard some story about a city that disappeared a little bit before the androids arrived, but they could never find a trace of the attacker. I think that might have done a little bit more. I guess I would kind of give it away that there's already a threat out there. I don't know, that's a delicate balance. But it does kind of feel like Cell does... He doesn't just show up because there is that thing with one of Bulma's employees finding the other time machine, but there isn't really any... He doesn't seem to have any impact on the greater Earth at that point.
Yeah, well, yeah, because he was like, he was like a larval state. He was like super weak, so he had to feed off a bunch of people to get stronger and stronger and stronger and get back to where he was, which is actually something I kind of like the idea of like this literal sci-fi monster eating people, because it kind of felt like like the original Aliens. It felt like that. It was like, oh, okay.
Definitely.
And the original,
they had like a creepy aesthetic with him, yeah.
Oh yeah, I really like the original Alien too. Like the original Alien movie was just French kiss muy bien. Good movie, 10 out of 10.
Oh yeah.
Would watch again. But like my thing is, so after the androids thrash the Saiyans, we relearn about the room of spirit of time. Now I know, if memory serves, it wasn't used too heavily in Dragon Ball. Compared to other times, like if I remember correctly, Goku as a kid only used it for a little bit, compared to Z, and especially compared to Z and Super. But I do know that like Goku knew about the Room of Spirit and Time, but it was like so harsh that training for the Saiyans and stuff wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, they at least have a viable way of explaining why that wasn't used before. Like, Goku was able to use it for a little bit, but it was too rough on him. And if you figure the human Z fighters at the beginning of Z really weren't... I mean, they were kind of close to where Goku's power was at the end of original DB, but at the same time, that didn't seem like too viable of an option. So, it's not a complete pull out of nowhere. They do at least have a decent explanation for it. It works well enough in the context of the story, and I like the whole idea that you can only be in there for a set amount of time or severe negative side effects would occur. That was kind of a good way to put a cap on its utility for the future.
Yeah, well, until that does get changed later, or it doesn't. I'm not too clear on it, but I think the most interesting part that started a big trend in DBZ, and this bleeds into Super, not as much as GT, but it bleeds really hard in Super, is basically the Super Saiyan forms getting extremely strong. Now, I like the idea that they were plateaued with Super Saiyan, and Goku being the first Super Saiyan figured this out. And that's why he, like, instead of training his ass off, like Vegeta and Trunks did to get super strong, he, like, made it to where Super Saiyan was, like, mastered and felt natural to him and Gohan. And that is something that I just really, really like. And now, like, in the later properties, GT does play with this idea of the same, like, Super Saiyan 4 is, like, their natural state, but they never trained the form, and it's something that I felt like wasn't earned compared to fully mastered Super Saiyan. And Dragon Ball Super does this a little bit with Super Saiyan Blue, but not as in-depth as the Room of Spirit and Time did with Super Saiyan 1.
I can agree with that, and I don't know if this was an intentional way of foreshadowing, or just kind of the way they wanted to make the animation pop, but when Goku does first go Super Saiyan against Android 19, you see that, like, his muscles just expand and contract very quickly. I guess it's to highlight that it's doing strain to his body as well as the heart virus, but the thing is it does add strain that shouldn't otherwise be there. And then Vegeta and Trunks, you don't really see that happen. You see them get kind of agitated and maybe like their veins pop a little bit, but it doesn't look like it puts a huge amount of strain on them, but the fact that they don't naturally stay in that form past a few minutes, it does kind of stand to reason that, yeah, the form does put a lot of strain on the user, and mastering it would definitely be helpful to all of them.
Yeah, like I liked when Goku like all his muscles burst for that Super Saiyan transfer. That's one of my favorites because it's just like, yeah, cool. But like, so I do like, because what happens is, Vegeta and Trunks go in the Room of Spirit and Time first, right?
Yes.
And they come out unbelievably strong, like compared to everyone else. At that point, I think Vegeta was the strongest character in Dragon Ball, right at that point, and so was Trunks. And I really like the fights with semi-perfect Cell, and then when Cell becomes perfect through Cell goading Vegeta, which is something I like because Vegeta didn't actually have the development he has in the Buu Saga, GT, or in Super for that to work. For that not to work. So, like, Cell really playing up Vegeta being this arrogant prick at the time is just honestly nice. I know there's people who do have, like, a problem with it. They're like, he shouldn't have done that. And it's like, well, Vegeta was basically riding high after the Frieza arc, and has become so powerful compared to Frieza that he thinks he's unstoppable. And he didn't have the love for Bulma or Trunks yet to really go above and beyond. So I liked that whole thing. Trunks' fight... Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, it was a dumb move, but it was kind of in line with what Vegeta did at that point.
Oh yeah, like, I really think that the fight with Trunks for Cell is actually pretty underrated. I know a lot of people kind of just skip over, because technically nothing happens. They don't... Vegeta... Krillin gets Vegeta out of there, heals him with a Senzu Bean, and that's about it. But I guess the only thing that's really learned is that, like, the form Trunks unlocked was not mastered. It was like a really fucked up version of Super Saiyan. And it was like his muscles were gigantic. He was sacrificing so much of this speed for power just to hit hard. And they like explain it's because he's basically this novice fighter who really doesn't understand what he's doing. But I do like that, because it does show that, like, people try to tell me that Dragon Ball is only based around how often they can power up with each other. And I'm like, yeah, that's not always true. And that was like a moment that really highlighted that.
Yeah, because, I mean, from Trunks' perspective... Okay, I'm gonna go on a short rant in a moment. I'll say what's about this part first, but I will actually say, the Cell Saga, I think I actually know this better in the manga compared to the anime, because shout out to the Shonen Jump graphic novel collection books, those things they released in the early 2000s that had chapters for, like, DBZ, Yu Yu Hakusho, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, Naruto. The Cell Saga was the part of DBZ they had in those monthly issues, so the ones we had, unfortunately, pretty much have none of them at this point, but I read that stuff pretty much religiously. So, from Trunks' perspective, yeah, he thinks that power is the best option, and he always says that he was no real match against the androids. We sort of see how power does matter when he first shows off his strength to Goku, that iconic scene where Goku's finger blocking the sword. It's implying that Trunks doesn't really have as much physical capabilities as Goku, like physical strength or brute force. So Trunks has realistically not been able to damage the androids enough to destroy them, and he assumes that more strength will fix this. He really doesn't have much reason not to assume this, because we do see in, like, the Trunks special, when he fights them, the androids are more or less body-blocking his moves and looking like they're showing no harm. I will also say that what's funny about that is the Trunks special kind of has some weird abnormalities in regards to just internal consistency, because it'll say, like, Piccolo died against the androids first, but in the actual show, we see a flashback that says Vegeta died against them first, and then in the manga, we never actually see the order where it happens. In the manga, we don't even see Trunks' future or future Gohan. It's like a flashback, or flash forward, I guess, when the Cell games begin. So that's really our first instance of seeing how strong the future androids are and how malicious they are. But other than that, Trunks never really had as much level of guidance in how to fight optimally, because Gohan was his only mentor at that point in time, and Gohan's biggest assets up until that point were based around his rage giving him an insane amount of power. Now, Gohan still gained enough speed that he could do a dent on whoever he was fighting, if it was Nappa, Recoome, Frieza, whatever, but that wasn't really translated well to Trunks, I guess, just because Gohan died before Trunks could ascend further. And seeing that point where Trunks is an inexperienced fighter, you mentioned Team 4-Star earlier, how they had that one-liner where Cell says something like, everyone you're around right now has seen more combat in a week than you have in your entire life. That's technically true. They had to survive grueling training with deadly time limits, battles against entire armies, impossible odds. They had to ration themselves, camouflage their energy, so it does highlight his lack of experience pretty well. And technically speaking, in the manga, Trunks never actually lands a hit on Cell, so it can be assumed he would have been able to do significant damage, just that he couldn't hit him. I don't know, I'm rambling a lot on that, but I just kind of felt that Trunks could have had a chance if he would have had the proper knowledge base going into his training routine.
I could agree with that. Like, Trunks, I do like the idea that that a lot of characters needed better training, like, especially someone like Trunks, because it does show that Super Saiyan's not just a crutch to instantly become the best form ever. Like, I personally believe that the training Super Saiyan gets in Z, especially in this entire arc, is probably some of the most important training for the franchise. Like, because they basically copy paste it with all the other arcs. Like, it's good that they don't immediately like copy paste it. That's not what I mean, but they do copy this method with the later Super Saiyan forms, which is perfectly fine to me. I don't mind the idea that Super Saiyan God or Blue needed a bunch of training, and the fact that those forms are still being trained is perfectly fine in Super, because they're like a higher power. And then the big peak for this training is definitely in the Cell games. The final fight with Cell and Gohan is where Gohan puts all of everything that he's ever been through and everything that Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks have been trying to do with these forms to like their absolute limit, and I really like that.
I think it does also kind of show how their strength does plateau a little too much at that point, because you'd think they go in the hyperbolic time chamber again after they're beaten by Perfect Cell the first time, but they go in separately, so they're not really a match for him. Again, the anime shows them getting bodied by the Cell Juniors, but in the manga it's implied. He says that they're the only ones who can hold their own against the Cell Juniors. We don't know if that means they're like dead even, or if they're just only barely able to keep up. But I do like to imagine that, yes, their power did increase a little bit, it just wasn't nearly enough because they didn't really focus on their weak points as much as they should have.
Like, that I think that line's a little weird, because it's like the Cell Juniors are just unreasonably strong for some reason, but
yeah,
I don't know.
The Cell Juniors have weird pacing.
Yeah, this part's where my least favorite part of the Cell arc begins, and that's the whole Cell Junior stuff, especially with like excuse me, especially with how Gohan is at full power right now, and he's just like not doing anything against the Cell Juniors. Like they do force the tension a little bit in this section, but they don't do. It's not like the Goku Black arc where it's just so egregious that you can't take it seriously, because they have been going through a lot of shit at this point, and it's like, okay, I see what you're doing, but I think they should have focused a little bit more on how they perceived Gohan's internal struggle. I think Gohan should have been getting beat by Cell initially, and then with the whole Cell Junior stuff to push his anger out, then it's like, okay, then we got it.
Well, what's interesting about that is, Not too long ago, I don't know if these are still around on YouTube. They're probably just being re-uploaded every once in a while. But there have been fan-edited, they call them theatrical cuts of the Android and Cell saga. The first one kind of capping at, I think the first one caps around the time Android 17 is absorbed, and the second one is just the second half of the saga. And funny enough, when they get to the Cell games, they just edit the Cell Juniors out altogether because it doesn't really work too well for the pacing. It does show good power scaling of how nobody can actually beat these Cell Juniors, and then Gohan in his Super Saiyan 2 state is able to one-shot them. That's kind of like the best way of showing a peak in strength. But you still could have accomplished that with just Cell and not the Cell Juniors. Like, the whole idea is that Cell is still too strong, he is gonna obliterate everybody, and then when 16 tries to interfere and stops, or fails, then that's kind of the thing that pushes Gohan further up. It is a point where they do things a little over-dramatically, and it is kind of like what we were saying once before, with how they weren't really thinking about power levels in that point, they just wanted to make it look thematically threatening. I think that's one of the cases where they do throw strength scaling out the window the hardest.
Yeah, but it makes for an iconic scene, so I wonder how... I wonder how you can perceive it, because that whole scene is one of Dragon Ball's most iconic scenes of Gohan surpassing literally everyone and unlocking this power that he's been shown to have since his inception, since he showed up in the series.
What I do like about Gohan being the one to transform there, it doesn't just carry on with his whole power necessarily, or even with what Trunks was saying, how he was the survivor for the longest, but it's like, whereas Gohan's major strength came from his rage, we never really saw Goku or Vegeta do that, or even Trunks to a large extent. They might have reached their Super Saiyan levels through rage, but they never gained a huge increase in raw power without a transformation, aside from maybe like one or two moments where they rushed at the opponent who wasn't on guard. So, Gohan being able to find the balance where he gets strength from his human emotions, and that combines with his Saiyan energy, that's probably one of the best ways to actually explain how he just had a straight upgrade that nobody else really got to.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I do love this in a lot of parts of the Cell arc, because I used to hate it a lot because I was getting overly critical and stuff. But it's okay, the only part of the Cell arc I really don't like is just the fabrication of where they have to do something that doesn't make a little sense just because we need something big to happen here. And it's oh boy, but it's I don't think it was handled super egregiously.
Yeah, I think there are little things about the Cell Saga that don't really make any legitimate sense, like the whole, well, the androids are here and they're coming to find Goku. We should take him to Kame House. That's literally the second place they'd look. Hey, Yamcha, don't you have a hut in the desert that the androids probably know very little about? It's being renovated.
Yeah, right, yeah, I'm doing rental work on my house.
That's one issue. I guess there really aren't too many issues, because I think the saga does give you a few good hints that things aren't going to go exactly the way we expect. Like, the entire time, when Trunks is describing the androids from his future, he's making it sound like they're just mindless and heartless killing machines, and when the Z-Fighters actually do get bodied, the androids don't kill them right away. They even say straight up, hey Krillin, you should probably give them some senzu beans unless you want them to die. So the fact they even knew about that implies they really aren't out for blood. They don't beeline toward Goku. They do want to fight him, but killing him doesn't seem to be their main objective. They just kind of want to mess around with the new power they have now that they finally killed off Gero.
Yeah, well, the androids are still some of the better characters from...
They are
still some of the better characters in the arc. I think they could have done more, but some of the I think the best, one of the best side fights in the arc is with Piccolo for 17, and then they're fighting Cell together. Sorry, the one game I was playing just jump scared me, so I was trying not to like freak out.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, it's like that whole fight with like 17 and Piccolo teaming up to fight the powered ups in Perfect Cell was actually something I wish they did more with the androids, was actually had them team up with the main characters, so that way when they become allies in the Boo arc and later in Super, it felt more earned. Because like the Boo arc, I think we'll talk about next time, because the Boo arc, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, especially with Dragon Ball Super now being a big thing that everyone hates for some reason. Not kidding, not everyone hates Super, but it's like the Boo arc does a lot with the Kid Saiyans, Goten, Trunks, but not much with the androids, and Super does so much with the androids, especially in the Tournament of Power. I love how they are in the Tournament of Power. They're especially 17 winning the tournament. It's just like
Absolutely.
if we got more development for the androids, I think we would have gotten more reason to like them. I would have liked, because like they're not unlikable characters. Like I think 18's biggest quality is that she's just Krillin's wife. I think a lot of people realize she doesn't have many personality traits outside of just like being kind of actually, I don't even know what her personality trait was in Z. I think it was just being the girl that beat Vegeta, because she didn't really do anything up until that point.
Well, the Boot Saga made her a little bit greedy, or I guess the movie did technically, because the whole plot of Bio Broly is that she's trying to collect the money that Mr. Satan owes her for when she threw the fight against him.
Yeah, that that idea I like, because it's like, if you are monstrously strong, why waste all your years training a million fucking hours in the day? Just make money off it, bro.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they definitely could have had a little bit more development. The fight you were talking about earlier, that was kind of an interesting turning point, because before that point, the Z-Fighters have no reason to assume that the androids and Cell are not working together, and Piccolo even acknowledges, like, wait, you don't know who this guy is? So, because from Piccolo's perspective, he was trying to kill 17, at least one of the androids, because that would have stopped Cell's plan once and for all. But as soon as he realized that, and then he's like, wait a minute, yeah, these guys haven't actually killed us yet, he figures it's probably the best idea to just hold Cell off while the androids do get away.
I do wonder, and I think we'll wrap up with this point, I do wonder, like, what in Trunks' future made the androids so heinous? Like,
So,
I do want, like...
That's very complicated. I think I have an answer for you, but this may not be correct. I think that this largely depends on whether or not the Shonen Jump manga or the Japanese subtitles for the anime were correct originally, but if I am correct, I think it's that the ones from Trunks' future were actually robots made from scratch, whereas the ones in the present time are supposed to be purely human, or they're supposed to be part human, whereas the reason Cell could fuse with them in the future was like they had enough human DNA, or it's possible that somehow just the way in which Jiro ruined their lives may have been the catalyst for making them more evil. Like maybe he just tinkered with his electronics in the whole butterfly effect that Cell did by burrowing underground years earlier. I don't know. I feel like I remember reading something that said they were purely mechanical, but I could be 100% wrong on that, because then that would kind of argue against Cell. I may have to look into that one.
Maybe, because, like, again, I do like Trunks' timeline a lot. I think it's a really interesting part of Dragon Ball that should, like, I'm glad it didn't get overused, because, like, oh my god, the amount of times Xenoverse references Trunks' timeline.
Yeah. There is one other thing that I do like about the Cell Saga that really isn't brought up, and this is actually a change that one of the Budokai games made. So, when Cell revives from his explosion, and he's going to do that last beam struggle with Gohan in the anime, like, he comes back, the smoke cloud forms, he pot-shots Trunks, and then that whole final sequence begins. Budokai 1 handled that differently. He comes back, and then he immediately starts fighting Gohan again, who is still a little bit stronger than him, and then he kills Trunks just out of fury, which causes the last sequence. You know, Vegeta doing the rage attack, and then Cell swatting him, Gohan getting his arm injured, trying to defend him. I like that idea a lot better because it kind of shows that, well, one, it doesn't have Cell ridiculously jump up in power from one more explosion, but at the same time, it kind of shows that even when Gohan is the strongest, he feels somewhat responsible for those around him and the mistakes he's made. Like, at that point, him not killing Cell when he had the chance, it caused Goku to die, it just caused Trunks to die, and he was about half a second away from it causing Vegeta to die. He didn't want that to happen, so he did it at the expense of his own arm. And I actually like that sequence a lot more in Budokai 1. That might be an unpopular opinion, but I do stand by that.
I haven't played the Budokai games, but I'll believe you. Like, I've noticed, like, even like the Xenoverse games they tend to do a lot of stuff differently with certain parts of DBZ. Like, even Dragon Ball Kakarot I've seen scenes on YouTube where they add in like character lines and dialogue that make the scenes a little bit more dramatic, and makes me wonder why that hasn't been in the series before. And it could be anything, like, time constraints on top of the pressure on Shonen Jump manga to produce product. Who knows? But I definitely like seeing when the other properties, like, it's the same story, but they like reinterpret it just a little bit to see if people like it more. Because like the Cell arc is like the whole Cell arc is like on the cusp constantly of being one of the greatest arcs in Dragon Ball, but it always seems like slip up just enough for me to prefer Frieza over it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, like I said, there's many pros and cons to it. I definitely think the first half of the saga is stronger than the second half. Just by the time Cell does find the androids, it becomes a lot more straightforward, whereas the first half still kind of has that mystery and suspense element. You're not really sure what exactly is going to happen next.
Oh yeah, but the Cell arc overall is my top 5 arcs. It's just that for me, the final scene with Gohan being feeling a little contrived is still something I don't like very much, but it's whatever. Like, it happens.
Yeah, it does.
Considering that there's parts in the series that have even more contrivance. The Goku Black arc is the ultimate contrivance arc of Dragon Ball.
Goku Black arc is like how every episode of Futurama, when they are about to end the conflict and they realize they have 4 minutes left, they're like, oh, I think I'm about to fall and die now. So, somebody help me.
I just pictured Fry appearing next to Cell during when they're fast forwarding through the universe, and Fry like goes, look, there's the Cell arc. But overall, I would say this was like our pseudo just opinions review of the Cell arc, because it was an arc that I recently was thinking about a lot. It's like, because I saw the catalyst for this like big thought process, like people saying that the Cell arc is bad and terrible, and I'm like, I don't think it is. I don't remember ever looking sitting through the Cell arc and wanting to chew my eyes out, because like,
who the heck is saying the Cell arc is terrible? I've barely ever heard anybody say that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just some I don't know. Maybe it was just trolls on Reddit, because I follow Dragon Ball Reddits, and like the Facebook groups we're in and the Reddit groups seem to be two different, like vastly different people. So it's like interesting. But I think for next time we'll try the Buu arc, because there's actually a lot I want to talk about the Buu arc. Primarily, the idea that there's just too many characters that amount to nothing. So.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that next time, because I'll have a good amount to talk about the Buu saga as well.
Yeah, but thanks for listening, everyone. We're going to try to have a new name soon, because there was an entire YouTube channel called Kings and Generals, and my dad was like, yo, I keep looking up your thing, and this big YouTube channel with 2 million views shows up, and it's like war reenactments and stuff or something like that. And I was just like, oh crap.
Okay, I blame myself for not knowing that. This is a little off topic, but I actually should tell this story. I should have known this because, have you ever heard of a guy on YouTube called the Armchair Historian? He does like minor animated videos about like old wars in history and narrates over them.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he went to my college. I've actually played a few poker games with the guy. I don't talk to him anymore, but he was at my college for like a year, so I really should have had a knowledge of like the circles around the whole, big war culture, you know?
Yeah, that's very nice.
Oh yeah.
I'll shoot some names by you later, but I'm gonna get going. My head's I'm getting a pretty bad migraine right now from that head cold. So thanks for listening, everyone. Sorry about the coughing in the beginning of the episode, but I'll see you guys next time.
Yep, we will see you all next time. Everybody have a good night.
Thanks.